So as you can see, the Realist News background is back, baby. Little warm. I can see a little sweat dripping off my head here. A little bit warm up in this room. It's been sunny out all day. Just got in here a little while ago. It's early, the sun's still out, which is beautiful. I don't have to wait till 8 o'clock at night when the kids start to go down for bed. I can do them at 5:30 or 6, get them out of the way, go hang out in the pool with the wife, kids even. Beautiful thing, I'm telling you. I love life right now with this house and everything. It is working out beautifully. So if you hear me talk about this house for like the next 2 weeks, because I'm so excited, I apologize for repeating some things. But we are just so psyched. Having said that, my green screen's up, but they've got the little incandescent, screw light bulbs. Quite a few in this garage, this, outbuilding, whatever. And there's a couple of fluorescent lights over that way where the garage doors are. And I've got a couple of fluorescent lights actually sitting in my garage, never been used yet. I knew I'd need them one day. This is the day, but I'm not hooking them up today. So I'm going to have them above me so that puts better light on the green screen behind me. So I don't know if you can see my eyes, they kind of are keyed out a little bit, so I look like I'm going feral zombie slightly, but I can assure you I'm not. So interesting news today, which is the 25th of July as I'm doing this video, of course. Zero Hedge is covering this. Security and Exchange Commission, or SEC, cracks down on initial coin offerings, concludes tokens are subject to securities laws. I was like, what do we got here? And here's the thing. They're talking about specific types of tokens. Now, one of the things when I had the CEO David David from 2030, which was the Pillar token guy, he was talking about certain things that could, if you read securities law, or whatever, or the rules, this certain type of token might be considered a security based off what it does, but what their token does, their Pillar token, is absolutely not. Which is why they ultimately allowed U.S. citizens to get into it. This one specifically talks about DAO type tokens. So this is a specific thing, not all ICOs, not all tokens. So before anyone gets all, oh my God, relax. And I'm here to tell you too, it's not exactly a bad idea to have a little more regulation into the cryptos, especially the ICOs and the tokens. You could have some 13-year-old kid create a website that claims to be an ICO token, whatever, it's going to do this and this. Looks professional. He's using a WordPress plugin like everybody else is that does these ICOs. And all of a sudden you just sent, $13 million to some 13-year-old kid who had good intentions, but yeah, So again, I can understand where there's a need for some regulation. But again, this is new. This is ground floor stuff. It'll ultimately get to that point. And I was going to mention, which I forgot to mention yesterday when I was talking about the guy that lives near Orlando that I quote unquote consulted for some Ethereum as payment, as a barter, whatever. We were both talking, and I said, you hear about these people getting hacked, and then next thing you know, you're following the address of who's hacking and where they're sending all the coins to, and they've got $22 million or $13 million of hacked coins. I'm like, ultimately you can find out where it went because it's all blockchain, it's all ledger based, right? So you're gonna, not ledger based, but there's a ledger you can continuously follow. You'll ultimately see when it went to an exchange or something and then when it sold off. So theoretically, people can find out who stole their tokens and how they unloaded them because they ultimately have to go to another exchange to unload the tokens, right? And then at that point, you would think when they cashed out for money, you'd be able to find them. So I was telling him, I said, all of the blockchain technology, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, whatever, they should have a system in place that once a hack has been done, someone's stuff's been stolen, phished, whatever, that they can block out that address and freeze everything. Freeze any and all transactions to and from that address and just completely stop it. And then ultimately when law enforcement, whether it's international law enforcement, whatever, gives the entity, in this case, let's say Ethereum or whoever works there, the proper documentation, whatever, in our case, I'm with the FBI, they would say, here's the documentation. We need to take those assets and disperse them back to where they came from. There should be a method to do that. And I'm telling you now, ultimately, something like that's probably going to come. But it ain't here yet, so you got to be super, super careful with what you're doing. So anyways, what do we got here? In groundbreaking news for the blockchain community, moments ago, the SEC issued a press release referencing an investor bulletin on initial coin offerings, which concluded that DAO tokens, a digital asset, are securities for regulatory purposes, and cautioned that securities law may, not does or doesn't, but may apply to offers, sales, and trading of interested in virtual organization targeting the increasingly more popular initial coin offerings. As a result of this change of treatment, those who use ICOs to sell tokens, which, as a reminder, have now surpassed over $1 billion in net proceeds, will have to register the tokens as securities. Those participating in unregistered offerings may be liable for violators of the securities laws, and that the purpose of the registration is to ensure that investors are sold investments that include all the proper disclosures and are subject to regulatory scrutiny for investors' protection. And I don't see a problem. Again, I don't see a problem with this. We don't want the wild west of trading, and that's kind of what it is right now. You can have people move markets left and right like no big deal. You can, again, the hacking and stuff that goes on. And again, you want some 13-year-old kid pretending to be some kind of big company, or I'm going to be a company and I'm going to hire some people, and this is what my token's going to do, so I need some investment now with Ethereum. Next thing you know, oh my gosh, a kid. And don't be surprised, I'm telling you now, don't be surprised if you hear a story like that sometime in the future, whether good or in bad intentions from the kid. In a press release issued on Tuesday afternoon, the Securities Exchange Commission said it had issued an investigative report cautioning market participants that offers and sales of digital assets by virtual organizations are subject to the requirements of the federal securities laws. Such offers and sales conducted by organizations using distributed ledger or blockchain technology have been referred to, among other things, as initial coin offerings or token sales. In its first official regulatory intervention of ICOs, the Securities and Exchange Commission said that whether a particular investment transaction involves the offer or sale of a security, regardless of the terminology or technology used, will depend on the facts and circumstances, including the economic realities of the transaction. The SEC's report of investigation found that tokens offered and sold by a virtual organization known as the DAO were securities and therefore subject to the federal securities laws. The report confirms that issuers of distributed ledger or blockchain technology-based securities must register offers and sales of such securities unless a valid exemption applies. Those participating in unregistered offerings also may be liable for violations of the securities laws. Additionally, registration provisions of the federal securities laws is to ensure that investors are sold investments that include all the proper disclosures and are subject to regulatory scrutiny for investors' protection. The SEC is studying the effects of distributed ledger and other innovative technologies and encourages market participants to engage with us. See, and again, let's not be the Wild West. We're the Securities Exchange Commission. We know what we do for the markets over here. We can see what's happening over here. Work with us. Let's work together. Why? Because this is going to be the future. And the Securities Exchange Commission could have just come out and said, no, these are completely legal and yada, yada, yada. But they have not. They're basically saying, work with us, both people, mainly the ICO companies that are doing this, and of course the people who participate. But you and I can't exactly work with the Securities Exchange Commission. We're the ones who want to get in on the ICO. So it's up to the ICO, the company that's running it, to do so. Which is why most of these ones that we've seen to date say, if you're a U.S. citizen, please do not do this because we don't know if we're going to be in violation of future securities laws or whatever, so just stay away. That's what most of them say. That's where most of what they're talking about here lies, in all honesty. But again, they're saying, work with us. We want to see this through. They know where blockchain technology is going, which is why they're saying this, in my opinion. We seek to foster innovative and beneficial ways to raise capital while ensuring, first and foremost, that investors and our markets are protected. Investors need the essential facts behind any investment opportunity so they can make fully informed decisions, And today's report confirms that sponsors of offerings conducted through the use of distributed ledger or blockchain technology must comply with the securities laws. The SEC's report stems from an inquiry that the agency's enforcement division launched into whether the DAO and associated entities and individuals violated federal security laws and unregistered offers and sales of DAO tokens in exchange for Ether, a virtual currency. The DAO has been described as a crowdfunding contract, but it would not have met the requirements of the regulation crowdfunding exemption because, among other things, it was not a broker-dealer or a funding portal registered with the SEC and the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. Quote, the innovative technology behind these virtual transactions does not exempt securities offerings and trading platforms from the regulatory framework designed to protect investors and the integrity of the markets, said Stephanie Avakian, co-director of the SEC's Enforcement Division. The SEC's Office of Investor Education and Advocacy today issued an investor bulletin educating investors about ICOs. As discussed in the report, virtual coins or tokens may be securities, maybe, depending on what they do, of course, may be securities and subject to the federal securities laws. The federal securities laws provide disclosure requirements and other important protections of which investors should be aware. In addition, the bulletin reminds investors of red flags of investment fraud and that new technologies may be used to perpetrate investment schemes that may not comply with the federal securities laws. While the SEC's intention to regulate ICOs will probably have an initial chilling effect on the market as it will make issuance of ICOs more difficult, it will also prove to be a blessing in disguise as it not only validates the blockchain capital raising mechanism, allowing the entrance of major banks to use it as an fintech alternative to IPOs, but considering some of the utterly idiotic and doomed to failure ICOs that have been observed in recent weeks, curb the proliferation of Ponzi, pyramid, and other get-rich-quick schemes, which in many cases are beyond borderline criminal. It will also reduce the risk of drastic losses once the initial euphoria period passes, and only the more serious and credible coin offerings remain as a result, something which ultimately will benefit the blockchain in general and Ethereum in particular. Ultimately, regulation of ICO will greenlight the eventual use of cryptos as eligible collateral in capital markets transactions, something Bank of America said in a report earlier today is critical to truly unleash the crypto community to its next evolutionary step in replacing fiat. So again, this may sound scary, and I know you probably saw the coins are down today. Oh, what's going on? I think this may have had something to do with it, but again, they're not telling us this is criminal activity, this is illegal, you shouldn't do this, this is a guy, they're saying work with us, we want to work with these companies, we want to work with blockchain technology to make sure, again, investors are being, taken care of and their investments are safe, and that no fly-by-night company can just come out and do this, which again, I get it. Which is why we said in the beginning of this, we, me, Cliff, Bix, everybody in the, that's talking about these things these days, these cryptos, said, you're responsible for your own money, and we're doing things in which everyone says, every one of these ICOs says, if you're an American, you shouldn't participate. If you're an American, you shouldn't participate. And what did everybody do? Everybody went around and used the Tor browser and got in. So what I'm seeing with the tokens we're talking about, that I talk about, that you and I may have all been in on, I don't think qualifies as what they're talking about here. DAO token. DAO token holders, come claim your money. That's from 2016. But if you look at the tweets, or to conclude, DAO tokens, a digital asset, DAO.casino, there's certain things. Let's look at some of the tweets. DAO tokens. I think they're right. The DAO tokens were securities because they provided voting rights, ownership / profit sharing rights, etc. Again, so these are, like I said, what does the token do? And can it be considered a security because of what it does? And the stuff like Pillar, ain't no way, no how Pillar is a securities. You know what I mean? Or security, excuse me. So anyways, I just wanted to share that because I'm sure some of you have probably heard the news. I'm probably getting a million emails. I haven't gotten back. I probably got 200 emails now at least. But after the move this past weekend, I've just been swamped. I haven't had a chance to answer any. And I will be deleting quite a number of them as I skim to kind of see what they're about. And if it's not really important to me, delete, delete, delete. I hate to say that. Time is money. And I get questions all the time. Hey, Joe, what do you think about this ICO? Hey, Joe, have you ever heard about this one? You know, I don't have time for that. Sometimes I do. So I'd say, I guess it doesn't hurt to ask me through email. But don't be surprised if I don't answer back. There's just too much going on in my life, basically. Not bad stuff, you know, good stuff. But I'm a busy guy. I'm doing the YouTube. I got my job. I just got done moving. I got to get a wire run out here to this building here tomorrow morning. Which by the time you see this, well, actually, it'll be about 9 a.m. We're doing a wire run here. And you want to know what's beautiful about the job that I work at, my normal day job? They said, well, you know, at night you do database updates and, you know, to our CRM and things like that. And you do have to work at your house to do those things when everybody's out of it. Even though it's not usually a long time, you know, it can get done in a few minutes. She said, one of my bosses said, we'll go ahead and send one of the guys out to install a wire run all the way out to your, you know, your little man cave, which I didn't call it a man cave, but whatever, in your little office. You know, you're not gonna have to pay anything for it. Yes, that's a beautiful thing. Because it's true, if I got to do some work at night, it does have to be here. Now, granted, I was gonna try to get her done one way or the other, but it's a beautiful thing where I work. So, anyways, off to the next video. Take care.